Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're diving back into Crusader Kings 3 with its latest free update, version 1.3. We're focusing on an exciting new element and looking at exactly how you can go about mastering it. The contents of this guide work on the base game outside of a few extremely specific elements, which I will highlight as needing the Northern Lords DLC. That means that whether you've got just the base game or the base game and the DLC, you'll be able to make the perfect duelist in Crusader Kings 3. Instigating duels. There are a few ways and reasons to kick off a duel in Crusader Kings 3. From time to time, you're the one who's going to be challenged, but at other times, you're going to be the one who's doing the challenging. With the Stalwart Leader perk from the Martial Lifestyle focus, you will be able to get any rival to duel you. Making rivals has a fair bit of luck associated with it, depending on how you go about it. As a child, you'll have the opportunity to develop some rivalries. As a parent, you might get the chance to instigate some rivalries for your children. As an adult, you'll get events from time to time that will bring a character closer to becoming a rival. You can target your vassals for rivalry. For example, if one in particular has been problematic, you can revoke their titles, which will bring them closer to forming said rivalry. Who you get a chance to rival and who you might want to duel may not always line up, but if you're just dueling for the sake of your honor and name and as a show of your skills, any rival is worth having to show off said skills. Just remember that you need to have the Stalwart Leader perk in order to instigate the duel against your rivals. As a character with any North Germanic culture, you can also use Trial by Combat to instigate a duel with other characters of North Germanic culture. For this, you need to have an imprisonment cause against them that will get used up, but they can't be in your own realm. So, they cannot be your vassal, guest, or courtier, and they cannot be your vassals' vassals, guests, or courtier either, and they cannot be your liege. A fellow vassal is a viable target, as is anybody outside of the aforementioned list of exclusions that is outside of your realm. They also can't already be in jail, yours or otherwise. This makes finding secrets that much more helpful. Based on what a faith considers to be criminal, exposing certain secrets will give you a cause for imprisonment against a character. If said character is, as stated, in another realm, be it a fellow vassal or a foreign realm entirely, and if they are of North Germanic culture, you can challenge them to trial by combat. And you can do this for gold, for a weak hook, for humiliation, and if the challenger is tribal, death. Keep in mind that the target doesn't have to be tribal to issue a trial to the death, only the issuer of the challenge. In the case of people who are ineligible or incapable of dueling, the target needs to be able to choose a champion. In other words, they have to be a ruler, so they can choose one of their knights as a champion. If they can't, they cannot be the target of a trial by combat. If they can, the trial by combat can proceed, though it cannot be to the death, even if the issuer is tribal. The older than 70, the infirm, the pregnant, the incapable, the blind, and those with a deadly contagious disease will all be unable to duel for themselves. As far as dueling a rival is concerned, too great a difference between your and their prowess will make it more likely that they will refuse the challenge, and if the target's prowess is below 10, they won't be a viable target to begin with at all. On the topic of prowess, let's discuss perfecting prowess. This perhaps goes without saying, but prowess is one of the most important elements when it comes to determining the winner of a duel. Prowess is, after all, what determines your ability to fight as an individual. There are a few ways to improve your prowess as an adult, but the process begins with the parents from before birth. If you want to raise a master duelist, you'll want to try and get the physique-related congenital traits into your bloodline nice and early. The higher level traits give bigger boosts to prowess, but they aren't always available, so take what you can get and hope for a Herculean or Amazonian pairing that will give you the highest chance of getting said trait passed on. If you can swing it, try and get the giant trait in there too. It gives a massive boost to prowess, though it is a bit of a health risk. With a Herculean or Amazonian giant child, you're giving your kid a head start in the life of a duelist. Over the course of their formative years, the education of a child will make a big difference too. The martial education is ideal, as it can also trigger a prowess trait. This happens if the child or educator have a culture with the knighthood innovation. And as long as the child is of a gender that can become a knight or equivalent, you will get this prowess trait to varying degrees. This prowess trait uses the child's martial education level as a baseline, and depending on physical traits and a dice roll, it applies a modifier to prowess. Over the course of said education, if you're the guardian, you should also take advantage of teaching moments to try and acquire the following traits: ambitious, brave, sadistic, and vengeful. You'll get the occasional chance to acquire these in adulthood too, and you should definitely take those opportunities, again, as long as it fits the role you're playing, as long as it fits your ideal of being this master duelist. Now, as an adult, there are a few more things you can acquire to bump up your prowess. A mental break can help get you irritable. If you happen to be a lunatic or sadistic, you might be lucky enough to get the option to be a cannibal. Certain random events, including mental breaks, will allow you to become athletic. Being strong helps, but I'm not entirely sure how to trigger that outside of seeking the aid of the spirits as a decision when your faith has the adorcism tenet. I believe that's how that's pronounced. And even then, it's only a chance to get strong. Things can also go horribly wrong. Becoming a torturer and being gallant might seem like opposite ends of the coin, but you can chase both to get their prowess benefits. And of course, there's the lifestyle focus itself that bumps your prowess too. There are more traits that impact your abilities in a duel beyond the prowess benefits that they may or may not give. So separately, let's take a look at training traits. Yes, we talked about traits a little in the previous section too, but those are traits who only help by virtue of increasing your prowess. The traits we're talking about now may or may not increase your prowess, but they all add potential special options when partaking in duels, and as such, they help your chances of success. A deviant, for example, might enjoy being hurt and use a previous round's injury to invigorate themselves and turn the tide in the next round. Deviant aside, they're typically the types of traits that go hand in hand with being a better warrior. You can become a blade master during a martial education and also through various events. Going on a pilgrimage will often lead to an event that has you fighting, and romance schemes can often lead to events that make you a blade master as well. On a hunt, you might get the opportunity to fight poachers, and this can also make you a blade master. If you want to ensure your child is a blade master, you can force them to be your only knight, set your marshal to improve commanders, and send your child out fighting in battles. That last bit is also not really necessary, as if you're lucky enough, your marshal will improve your child and make him a blade master. It's risky though, but as they say, no risk, no reward. The hunter trait, presumably, results from going on hunts repeatedly. The berserker trait cannot be acquired by the player character, but you can ensure your heir gets it by making them a knight and sending them off to fight. If they are brave, impatient, or wrathful, they're more likely to trigger it, but with or without those traits, a battle event can trigger that adds the berserker trait. Note that this does not apply to commanders. They have to be a knight. That is why player characters cannot acquire this trait, unless of course you do it through the ruler designer. Your children, however, can use berserker. The shield maiden trait can be given to a Norse culture, Asatru faith, female character who is considered close family as long as they have a prowess higher than 12. They can choose to deny the honor if they have certain traits, being lazy, being craven, that sort of thing. Keep in mind as well that the Shield Maiden trait is only an option with the Northern Lords DLC. The Varangian trait is another one that the player character can't acquire, but they can ensure that their children perhaps will. At times, a champion will request to join the Varangian Guard, and if they return, they'll come back with the trait. With the Northern Lords DLC, if you're a character with Norse culture, you'll be able to use Wanderlust to send characters into the Varangian Guard as a Dynasty head interaction, so any members of your Dynasty can be sent off, including your heir. The Deviant trait is a hard one to come by, but it also helps in fighting duels. I'm actually uncertain if the Deviant secret needs to be known for it to impact duels, or if a character that is secretly a Deviant will get the same benefits from it, with or without the world knowing. The Viking trait is the last of the traits that can help win a duel, and it's one that takes a fair bit of effort to get, though it isn't necessarily difficult. Leading raiding armies from the front is all you need to do, but the trouble is, you have to do it a lot. A minimum of 20 raids is required, and after that, every additional raid you perform has a slightly increased chance of triggering the trait. It doesn't just automatically appear after your 20th raid. It's important to keep in mind that most cultures only get the raider trait, but if your culture has the long ships innovation, the trait is dubbed as Viking. Now, while prowess and traits work on an individual basis, you can take things a step further and help all the duelists of the family out too. Dynasty decisions. That's right, if you forgot, your dynasty itself can be known for its fighting prowess, and this extends beyond the battlefield and into duels as well. If you're planning on focusing on dueling beyond just the one character, it's not a bad idea to use legacies appropriately, but do keep in mind that these bonuses apply to everybody from your dynasty. That means that you will be helping other members of your dynasty fight better as well as yourself. So if you're planning on dueling siblings, uncles, aunts, cousins, etc., this might come to bite you, so just be wary. Again, never forget, you can try and fabricate secrets about one of your siblings who is, let's say, the king of a nearby realm. You can use that as a cause for imprisonment, you can duel them to the death, and if you're the heir because they haven't got a different heir, you can acquire their land. But if you've helped them become a better duelist through your dynasty legacies, you might just be upping your own challenge. Now, there are only two options that make any notable difference here. Under the warfare path, you have the House of Warriors option to bump up prowess, and if you have the Northern Lords DLC and you're playing as a Norse culture ruler, you'll also have access to the Pillage path and the Sea Wolves within, who also can be used to increase prowess. Also only available to Norse culture rulers with the Northern Lords DLC is Wanderlust under the Adventurer path. As mentioned before, this allows you to send characters to the Varangian Guard, which has them return with a Varangian trait as long as they don't die. Sure, it doesn't help the current player character out, but it can certainly help your heir when their time comes. Determining duels. When a duel actually kicks off, there are a couple of elements at play. The overall structure involves choosing your action based on the circumstances and location of the duel, as well as the personality traits and relationship between the involved parties. Over the course of 3 to 4 rounds, a winner is determined, and based on the conditions of the duel, the results play out. In some cases, humiliation, in some cases, death, and in some cases, something in between. So when your turn comes, you'll have a set of options that you can pick from. And of these options, the higher your prowess, the more likely you are to draw a good set of choices from a much larger pool of options. The defender moves first, and then the attacker picks their move, with combat lasting the aforementioned 3 to 4 rounds. The 4th round is the final round, and if a winner isn't determined by any other method, then the person with the higher prowess wins. This is why prowess is so important. Beyond just getting better choices, the ultimate sort of sudden death decision maker is prowess. It is important to note that during a duel, prowess is not a static number. Duel edge bonuses and malices can come into play depending on the moves made by the two parties, and these will either add or subtract from the two duelists' prowess. These modifiers, should they arise, are temporary, lasting only the remaining duration of the duel, and with the right moves, an individual with a significantly superior prowess can see a huge penalty, while an individual with a poor level of prowess can be elevated. This can tip the balance of a duel very quickly, especially if it goes to that last round, so don't assume that the person entering the duel with a higher prowess is guaranteed the victory. Not by a long shot. Duel edge bonuses and malices don't always come into play, but don't hesitate to take advantage of them if you feel it necessary when the opportunity arises. The options presented, as mentioned before, are largely determined by prowess. Where you're more likely to draw better options, the higher your prowess is, but beyond that, you'll draw options based on your traits as well. We discussed which traits can have an impact earlier, and I don't want to outline exactly what kind of options they all unlock, but suffice it to say that some traits can help turn a disadvantage into an advantage, or it can bring a swift end to things under the right circumstances. As you make your choices, you'll see two key determining factors get mentioned: likelihood of success and risk of injury. The primary way to win is to have your likelihood of success be above your opponent's by a certain threshold. The better your prowess, the better the moves you'll have access to sooner, and the faster you'll be able to increase your likelihood of success. Your opponent, meanwhile, will play catch-up, and if their prowess is pitiful, the potential moves they'll draw will be worse, and the gap between your two likelihoods of success might grow towards that threshold faster. This obviously works both ways. If they cross the threshold above you, you'll be losing the duel. Risk of injury, meanwhile, climbs up over time depending on the moves you make, and they act as a foil to your increased likelihood of success. If risk of injury gets too high over the rounds, you will lose the duel and also be wounded. So, as you're picking and choosing your moves, you'll want to keep an eye on your opponent's risk of injury and likelihood of success and compare it to your own when making your picks. These aren't listed anywhere, so you'll simply have to keep a track yourself. If they're playing it safe but also aren't improving their likelihood of success, they're opening you up to really push for high increases to your likelihood of success, but depending on the options you have available, you might also be opening yourself up to a high increase to your risk of injury. There's something to be said about dueling cautiously and forcing your opponent into making a mistake, forcing them to lose as a result of their risk of injury, rather than simply overwhelming them and winning because of the gap between your likelihoods of success. Pick your approach wisely. Study your opponent, try and think like your opponent, be prepared for what they might try to pull, and try to stay ahead. Otherwise, you might find yourself ahead on display outside their halls. There you have it, all the key elements to becoming a masterful duelist. Keep in mind, even if you're the best there ever was, all it takes is a cruel act of fate to bring about your demise. Always study who you're up against to see exactly how they might behave to approach the duel accordingly. And be honest with yourself. If you're not a great duelist, don't pretend. Sometimes, a pathetic warrior with an inclination for deceit might find a way to best you if you're not wary. Sometimes, you're that pathetic warrior with that inclination for deceit. With all this said, everything suggested in this video should help you get the best possible starting point. While it will be difficult to acquire them all for one character, you can definitely collect quite a few of these traits and prowess buffs to ultimately help win. Or, of course, again, you can just build a custom character and go on a ridiculous rampage right off the bat. I hope this video has given you some insight, and if you have any thoughts, suggestions, or ideas of your own, feel free to share them in the comments down below. I'd love to hear some epic dueling stories too, so share away, either in the comments or in the Discord linked in the description. Make sure also to subscribe to the channel for more Crusader Kings and strategy gaming content in general. It is the main focus around here after all. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.